Hello, everyone, and welcome to Headwaters Science Institute Research Experience Presentation Night 2. We are so excited to be sharing our presentations with you all here today. My name is Courtney Kuja. I am the Research Experience and Data Program Manager here at Headwaters, and I'm so excited to be sharing all this hard work that our students have been doing this semester. I have had the joy, the absolute pleasure of having each and every one of these students in class. They've been so passionate and excited about doing their research, and I'm so excited to have them share it with you. And I just want to personally say a huge thank you to the Florida Department of Education. They funded 100% of this program, so I wouldn't be here, these students wouldn't be here without that generous funding, and I'm just so thrilled to have them be a part of the research experience and be presenting to you all today. If you like what you see and you have a student that would like to join this or do this in the future, we are accepting applications still for our winter research experience. You can check out that tiny URL or it's on our webpage. So please register, or if you or someone you know that is a high school student who would like to participate. One other quick announcement before we get going is I have 5 first-generation low-income college-bound students from Upward Bound in Nevada that need funding to participate in our winter research experience. So what I want for Christmas is to get these students in the research experience. So if you're feeling generous, please send a donation our way to sponsor these kids at that tiny URL, or you can also check it out on our website. And then our last one that I want to share with everyone is please share any questions or comments you have for our researchers on Facebook Live, YouTube. If you're here in the StreamYard presentation link, you can also toss some questions our way there. So we're really looking forward to it, and let's get to those presentations. So our first student up is Ava Larson. Ava comes to us from Sarasota, Florida. She's been a wonderful student to have in class. Her mentor, Sean, was not able to attend, but she did this really fascinating study about sleep and ADHD, and she's going to tell you all about it. Take it away, Ava.
Thank you. Okay, so it's called Slumber and Speed, a comparative analysis of the impact of sleep duration on cognitive functioning speeds between adolescents with and without ADHD. Agenda. First, we're going to talk about what is ADHD and how it's connected to sleep and cognitive functioning. Then from there, we'll look at my research question, which was how the amount of sleep correlates with cognitive processing speed in people with and without ADHD. And then we'll look into how I conducted this research and how I used a survey and Stroop testing. And then we'll look at my results and my data figures, which turned out to be not significant. But we will still discuss how I need more time and participants to produce more significant results. Starting off with what is ADHD, or Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. This is a neurodevelopmental disorder affecting one's brain and regulatory skills. It's composed of attention deficit, which is the inability to regulate attention, and hyperactivity, which is the inability to regulate movement. People with ADHD can have one or both of these, and it can impact their executive functioning skills, which can include working memory, self-monitoring skills, planning and prioritizing, task initiation and organization. And for hyperactivity, it can cause impulsivity, fidgeting, and not sitting still. These deficits can be a significant challenge for adolescents in school who require such executive functioning skills to be successful. Cognitive functioning. What is it? It includes domains in perception, memory, learning, attention, language, and processing. By aiding in the formation of neural pathways, sleep helps in building up these domains so that when one does not receive enough sleep, this can impact their cognitive functioning. It can be seen that these cognitive functioning domains are quite similar to the executive functioning skills in ADHD. So the question raises, How does the amount of sleep correlate with cognitive processing speeds in adolescents, ages 12 to 18, between those with ADHD and those without? For my overall hypothesis, I predicted that with more sleep comes faster cognitive processing speeds. But for people with ADHD, this effect is quite less. So that with the same amount of sleep as adolescents with ADHD, people without ADHD, people with ADHD will still have slower processing speeds. I used a survey and distributed this to a group of adolescents, and found that there was no statistical significance at this time. So for materials, I used Microsoft Forms to create the survey and 2 Stroop tests. You may be wondering, what are Stroop tests? Well, Stroop tests help to measure cognitive functioning, including processing speed, by taking the name of a color and coloring that in a different color. The test taker has to answer the color of the word, not the color itself. For example, blue might be colored in red, and the test taker has to answer in red, or red may be colored purple, and you have to answer purple. For methods, the first thing I did was create the survey, and this survey asked questions on whether they have ADHD or not, their age, and their perceived amount of hours of sleep. Then I distributed parent permission slips to each of the participants, and once I received those slips back, I then distributed the survey link. From the survey, or once they took the survey, I immediately received the raw data through Microsoft Forms, and then I could start my data analysis through software, including Data Classroom and Intellective Statistics. For my results, I mainly found that there was no statistical difference or statistical significance between ADHD, non-ADHD, hours of sleep, and the 2 speed test times. In this table, you can see the means of each of the variables for people without ADHD, the standard deviation, and the number of participants, which was 24. In this table, you can see the same thing, but for people with ADHD, and there were only 7 participants. Compiling this into a group of data tables, we can see that people with ADHD had overall faster test speeds for both test 1 and test 2. And for accuracy, people with ADHD had higher accuracy for test 1, lower accuracy for test 2. Keep in mind, though, that their hours of sleep was way more than the people without ADHD. Also, there were a lot less participants for ADHD than there were without, which can significantly impact the significance of the results. Going more into the significance, we did a linear test between speed test and the hours of sleep. The first graph shows speed test 1, and second graph is speed test 2. Because the line is almost flat, this means that there's no statistical significance between that data. We also ran a MANOVA test and found that for test 1 and test 2 speed, there is no correlation between the ADHD groups or the hours of sleep. With a p-value of 0.360, there was no significance for ADHD and non-ADHD, and for a p-value of 0.978, there was no statistical significance for hours of sleep. We did group the hours of sleep into low, moderate, and high to show the correlation between those groups. Results. So with harder classes, no sleep, and social drama and everything that comes with being a teenager, it's likely that we will have sleep deprivation. And this can significantly impact our cognitive functioning skills. With 1 in 8 adolescents, ages 12 to 17, diagnosed with ADHD in 2016 and 2019, this large pool of people with ADHD, along with sleep deprivation and their deficits in executive functioning skills, this can cause significant problems with their success in school. This is why it's so important that we continue research in this area over a longer time span and with more participants to produce more significant results and hopefully define sleep as a non-pharmaceutical treatment for ADHD. Factors that could have influenced the results include that the survey responses were subjective. The adolescents who participated, their data was based on their own perception. It's also assumed that the respondents answered honestly and accurately. If they didn't, this could also affect the results. Although the study did not yield significant results, this does not mean that the original hypothesis is incorrect. It just means that it hasn't been proven yet. This just goes to show that we really need to continue research. I would also like to look further into myelin sheath thickness and white brain matter integrity to hopefully see if there's any correlations between that and sleep, and that hopefully this will present more quantifiable results than just perceived amount of sleep and a cognitive processing test. I'd also want to look to see if exercise could present as a better method of treating this rather than sleep, and if exercise has a more profound effect on cognitive functioning. And then the last thing I would like to look, instead of just testing Stroop testing, using different methods instead of just the one. Acknowledgements, I would like to acknowledge my mom and my mom's friend for helping me last minute with data collection and data analysis. And then I would also like to thank my teacher for helping me in distributing surveys and getting signatures and all the steps in data collection. And then questions.
Wow, Ava, that was wonderful. I know I've learned a lot throughout your process this semester, and I'm super excited to ask you a few questions here in a moment. I just want to remind everyone, if you have a question for Ava or any other presenter, please toss them in the chat, in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. But while you think of a few questions for Ava, I have one to kick us off. So this is our very first one, and it's, how do you think your research would have been impacted if you had access to a larger research group? So if you had more people to survey, how do you think that would have impacted your research?
Yes, if I had more people with ADHD to research rather than people without, it would have more leaned towards my hypothesis, in that with more sleep, you saw faster processing speeds, better accuracy, and overall better results and more statistical significance, because there were only 7 people with ADHD and 24 without.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get some more folks with ADHD to take your surveys. So next time you get a qualitative survey at the end of anything, know that folks like Ava, folks like me are waiting for those answers, just hoping to hear from you. My next question is, what other cognitive abilities do you think are impacted by sleep?
What other cognitive abilities are impacted by sleep? Well, for my test, I only looked into processing speed, but there are a ton of other cognitive abilities that may be impacted, like previously in my slides, where it's you could do organizational skills or attention and stuff that also lines up with ADHD too, with the executive functioning skills. So it may not only be processing speed, it could be attention, focus, and time management. Yes.
That's awesome. You actually got a few comments from the audience. I'll give one from LaShonda. She says, great presentation. And then we have another one from Carmen that says, way to go, Ava. Since the test only looked at 1 night of sleep, what might happen if you tracked the lack of sleep for 5 nights in a row? What do you think would happen then?
Yeah, that's my mom who's asking the
This
question.
question.
Yeah. So for tracking the sleep over a longer period of time, if you get a very little amount of sleep over only in one night, that may not significantly impact your cognitive functioning. But if you're getting 2 hours of sleep for a week or over a longer period of time, you'll likely start to see that cognitive functioning may decline.
Yeah.
So,
I know my cognitive functioning would definitely decline after 5
mhm.
nights of lack of sleep. It's
Yeah.
one night of not ideal sleep, and it impacts me, so that's
So
awesome. You
that's
have
what
one oh, go ahead.
that's what we wanted, or that's what I wanted to do, like in the future, is hopefully conduct the experiment over a longer period of time to see like how sleep over a longer period of time may impact them.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. You actually have one last question that I'm gonna let you, get to from Jackie. Says, "Did you control for whether the ADHD participants were on medication for their ADHD?"
I did not do that. I did consider that as like a potential factor that may skew the results, because with medication, it could like reduce the effects of ADHD. And so I did not take that into account for this project, but I would do that for future research.
Yeah, when you are the head of, social scientists at a lab, you'll be able to control for that, and I look forward to that day when you're able to do that, so great job, Ava, that was wonderful. It was so fun to hear about your research. And just a few quick announcements as we move into our next presenters. My name is Courtney. I run the research experience here at Headwater Science Institute. If one of your students is presenting, they've been meeting with me weekly, and I've had the honor and privilege to get to know them. And I wouldn't be able to do that without the Florida Department of Education funding 100% of this program this semester. It's been absolutely wonderful to have all these Sarasota students in my classroom. So thank you so much. If you like what you see and you have another high school student who would like to participate, have them join our winter research experience. This one starts January 15th. This is next semester's cohort. We have that tiny URL that you can check out if you would like to participate in our winter research experience. And then the last thing that I'm going to plug for really quick is our sponsorship of some college-bound first-generation students. Let me get this one up real quick. This is our QR code. So I have 5 college-bound low-income first-generation students that want to participate in the winter research experience. As a first-generation college student myself, this is really near and dear to my heart. So the only thing I want for Christmas is for these 5 students to get into the research experience. So we're looking for donations to get all 5 students into our program for the winter research experience. So if you're feeling generous, you'd like to donate and support a really important cause, it would mean the world to me if anyone could check that out. There's a URL, there's a QR code. But after all of our commercials, we'll go ahead and have Wyatt, who is next. So let me just take down my banners here real quick, and we'll bring Wyatt up and his mentor, Eva, to introduce him.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eva, and I'm a master's student finishing up my first semester at SUNY ESF studying mycorrhizal fungi. And I am so excited to present Wyatt Wrigley, who is a junior at Sarasota High School. And he's presenting his project looking at heavy metal concentrations across different socioeconomic blocks in Sarasota County. And I've just been so impressed with the rigor, skill, and adaptability of Wyatt's approach to this research project. He came up with an incredibly important and well thought out research question, and his experiment was really executed with the rigor of a graduate student project, in my opinion. And he found some really awesome patterns. So I am so excited to have him share this with you all.
Thank you, Eva. So my presentation is on testing soil for heavy metals and varying socioeconomic status block groups within the city of Sarasota, Florida. In an ever-industrializing world, the problem of environmental pollution is becoming increasingly widespread, observable, and dangerous. In a rush to supply energy for growing populations and build industry, the Earth's resources are being exploited in a reckless manner, increasing the threats that pollutants pose to the environment. Among the most dangerous environmental pollutants are heavy metals. Heavy metals are dangerous because they stay in the environment for a very long time and are toxic to humans at low concentrations. Specifically, the RCRA8 metals, RCRA8 metals, arsenic, barium, cadmium, chromium, lead, mercury, selenium, and silver, have been identified as heavy metals of great concern by the Environmental Protection Agency in the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, known as RCRA. It has been observed in previous studies that socioeconomically disadvantaged communities are disproportionately affected by exposure to heavy metal pollution, presenting great concerns in the field of environmental justice. It was the goal of this study to compare RCRA8 heavy metal concentrations in the surface soils of varying socioeconomic status parks across the city of Sarasota, defined by income level, and observe any differences in heavy metal concentrations between income levels. It was hypothesized for the study that RCRA8 heavy metal concentrations in park surface soils would be different among varying average household income status parks in the city of Sarasota. It was predicted that heavy metal concentrations would be higher in parks of lower socioeconomic status, with parks of the low income level demonstrating the highest concentrations of RCRA8 metals in surface soil. "20 parks in Sarasota were tested for surface soil RCRA8 heavy metal concentrations. Metal concentrations were categorized by their income level obtained from decennial census data. And these parks are shown here. I don't know if they're high resolution enough, but these are the parks that I selected randomly across the city. Each park had one surface soil composite sample. This was made by collecting random samples across the park using the random stratified sampling method to ensure uniform representation of heavy metal content in surface soils of each park. And this is pictured here. This is how I visually mapped out my subsamples. This method involved dividing parks into 4 cardinal direction areas and collecting 5 random subsamples for each area and then homogenizing them. This is a subsample that is pictured on the left. I put it into the composite sample bag, and then my sampling probe was sterilized between each park. X-ray fluorescence, XRF screening, an accredited practice for assessing metal contents of soils, was conducted with a handheld XRF analyzer. Each composite sample was analyzed 5 times in different spots of the composite sample bag to ensure reproducibility, and data was digitally recorded on an SSD drive and uploaded onto an Excel sheet. Surface soil lead and chromium concentrations measured in parts per million varied significantly by income level, with a p-value of 0.03 for both metals. Post hoc pairwise comparisons demonstrated that the low to medium income level, shown here, demonstrated an 80% higher mean lead concentration than the high income level, which is pictured here on the left, with a p-value of 0.04. The medium to high income level had a mean chromium concentration that was 82% higher than the mean chromium concentration in the low income level, which is shown here on the right, with marginal statistical significance. Arsenic, barium, cadmium, mercury, selenium, and silver concentrations in soil did not vary significantly between income level categories. Heavy metal concentrations did not consistently show a positive trend with increasing average household income in this figure. However, when comparing the greatest and least average heavy metal concentrations, shown in the bars here, there was a narrow increase in average metal concentrations from a higher income level to a lower income level for 5 out of 6 heavy metals, which are shown here, in A, B, C, D, and F. And then sorry, I got lost here. So chromium demonstrated statistical significance with an opposite trend, or selenium demonstrated statistical. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. Selenium in blue, it's not in blue, for E, was the exception where the opposite trend was observed. Our hypothesis of RCRA 8 heavy metal concentrations being different among varying average household income parks was true in the case of lead and chromium, where both metals demonstrated a statistical significance of P equals 0.03 through one-way ANOVA statistical analysis. The prediction that heavy metal concentrations would be higher in parks of lower socioeconomic status was true for 6 of 8 heavy metals, with only lead demonstrating statistical significance. Chromium demonstrated statistical significance with an opposite trend, and so did selenium, without statistical significance. Differences in mean concentrations of metals between income levels was partly due to high readings, which were statistical outliers. And for example, in the case of arsenic, which is pictured in this graph here, the low income level contained the greatest mean concentration of arsenic with an outlier of 21 parts per million, which is shown in this graph here. The dot in the low income level is dramatically higher than the other readings, the other concentrations. Although some concentrations are statistical outliers, it is important to consider the environmental factors such as pollutants that may have caused outlier elevated heavy metal concentrations in lower income brackets or higher income brackets. Arsenic, barium, cadmium, and mercury concentrations were found to be higher than the residential soil cleanup target levels set out by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection in parks across the city of Sarasota, with no trend of contaminated parks and income level. This demonstrates a public health concern across all the city of Sarasota. Limitations of this study included the limit of detection that the XRF detection device had, time, and park sample size. This study points to exciting new directions of research. While there was no clear and consistent trend of increasing heavy metal concentrations with income level, disparities in heavy metal concentrations between income levels did exist and were statistically significant for lead and chromium. Further research is necessary for confirmatory analysis of heavy metal concentrations in surface soils of contaminated parks. And finally, I would like to thank Eva for providing essential insight into the development of methods, data, evaluation, and the discussion for this project. Brightfields Inc. for providing access to an XRF screening device, Heather L. Wrigley, my mom, project manager at Brightfields Inc. for training and oversight of the XRF, Dr. Stephen A. Johnson, technical director at Brightfields Inc., as the technical advisor for assistance and execution of this project, Mast Research Institute at Sarasota High School for providing fundings to make this project possible, Andy Harshman and John Stevenson, research directors at Sarasota High School, Courtney Kudera, program manager of Headwaters Research Institute, and Anna Valeria for draft review of this research project. And here are my references. Are there any questions?
Awesome. Great job, Wyatt. I know your project has been so interesting this semester. It's been really fun to watch you gather all of your materials and do, of course, all of your analysis. So please share any questions or comments you may have in the comment box, just like you all did with Ava. And I'm going to let Eva go ahead and go first with some questions.
Awesome. Great job, Wyatt. I'll share this question in the chat. But I was wondering what the most interesting and or concerning pattern that you found in your results.
The most interesting pattern was definitely between the two metals that showed statistical significance. Lead demonstrated a mean higher concentration in the low to medium income level, which was much higher than the other income levels. That was because of particularly high readings of lead at one park in Sarasota, which drove up the mean. So it would be interesting to know what caused that at that particular park, whether that was from natural levels of lead in the soil lithology, or if it was from pollutants. But yeah, and then it was also interesting that chromium demonstrated an opposite statistical trend. Well, not trend, but higher levels of chromium in higher income parks. It would be interesting to know why that happened, or if there are any pollutants that caused that.
Yeah, awesome. Building off of that, I was wondering if you were to have an unlimited budget, what would you want to do next to expand this experiment?
That's an awesome question. So I would like to use inductively coupled plasma spectrometry, which is a much sorry, that's a big word. That's a much more precise tool for analyzing the concentrations of metals. It has a much lower limit of detection, so I can get much more specific concentrations for my soils. That costs a lot of money, so I wasn't able to do that for this project. But yes, I would use that.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
The question you have from me, Wyatt, is do you think it's kind of a long one, so I'm going to pop it up here. It says, do you think there would be a difference in heavy metals in parks in cities where lead pipes were used versus those who never used lead pipes?
Yes, I absolutely do think that. Yes, 100%. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that would affect the concentrations of surface soils caused by like polluters that are above the ground, but obviously, if they're used, that could contribute to the pollution of surface soils for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Wyatt. Thank you, Eva. It was so wonderful to learn so much about your project and watch you collect information throughout the semester. It's such an interdisciplinary question. We do have our next presenter coming up here in a second. But once again, I'm going to say my thank yous. A huge thank you to the Florida Department of Education for funding 100% of this program this fall. All of these students were able to participate based on a grant that they won. So I have had it's been such an honor and been such a joy to get to know the students of Sarasota County, Florida, and to learn so much about their passions and have them in class. So I can't say thank you enough, because while they learned a lot from me, I think I learned just as much, if not more, from them. So thank you all. If you like what you see and you know someone who'd be interested in the winter research experience starting January 15th, please check out that tiny URL. We'd be more than happy to have more students in our upcoming research experience that is for the spring semester. And then our last plug is that we have 5 college-bound, low-income students from low-income first-generation students from Reno, from Upward Bound, that want to participate in the winter research experience. And being a first-generation college student myself, I know how important this opportunity is for them, and we're looking to fundraise for them. So if you could check out this QR code and donate a few dollars, that's really all that I want for Christmas. So please go ahead and check that out. But while you're getting that in line, I'm going to introduce our next presenter, which is Wainsy. She has been wonderful to have in class, and I'm so excited for her to share her work with you today. Her mentor, Char Rin, is going to be introducing her, and they've been having a few connection troubles, so you don't get to see their smiling faces, but you get to hear their wonderful voices. So, Taryn, go ahead and take it away and introduce Wainsy.
Yeah, hey everybody, my name is Taryn Chea, and I'm a PhD student studying soil and water sciences from the University of Florida. I have the great pleasure today to introduce Wainsy, who will discuss her findings on the relationships between United Nations aid, education levels, and GDP across different countries. After working this semester with Wainsy, I'm immensely proud of her progress and her ability to tackle the big questions that she had in mind. She's well on her way to becoming a social scientist, so I will let her take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Today I will be talking about how the world isn't fair, but I think you already knew that. I will be evaluating the significance between education and UN aid. I used a lot of Google Scholar and burned my eyes with the amount of screen time I had on my laptop, but in the end, it was discovered that higher income nations made an effort to donate less to the United Nations over time, while lower income nations strive to donate more. There turned out to be no connection between a nation's average education levels and the outcome of a nation's economy, nor their contributions to the UN. While researching for my project, an open document was used to keep track of all of my resources. This project does not reveal what kind of working economies sampled member states had, as they varied greatly, what kind of work their citizens did in order to make a difference in the economy, what kind of products were consumed or manufactured, or the population sizes of each nation that would have influenced differences in GNI and GDP. There are so many things that influence the success of a nation. Only key concepts were assessed here. Mini disclaimer though. Throughout this presentation, you're going to hear me mention donations quite a bit, but this is only under the context of monetary funds for humanitarian aid. There are many different types of aid administered by the UN, such as food security programs and military enforcement by their peacekeepers and other volunteers. Some burning questions I had throughout the completion of this project were whether the distribution of humanitarian aid is fair and impartial, and if it turns out that this system is not perfect, what other highly trusted systems could be flawed. Let's begin. First off, I wanted to determine if, in any way at all, the education levels within a nation influenced how much money was donated to the UN, and if there were any trends within a nation's economy that were reflected as one of the perks of higher education. For context, the United Nations, or the UN as they're typically called, is an international organization that claims to specialize in maintaining peace, security, and delivering aid to where it is needed. The UN has done missions in almost every region, and with their current member state count at 193, there are definitely a lot of people and functional governments that rely on this institution and fully entrust their fate with it. With that being said, with great responsibilities to juggle around the circumstance allows for a greater opportunity for many things to slip through the cracks. The UN requires all of its member states to contribute 0.7% of their GNI to the organization annually. Only 5 states have met this goal. While the UN holds this empowering and ever so important role in keeping order in the world alongside other institutions such as the African Union, the United Nations is no stranger to scandals and controversies that taint its image. For this project, all data were collected and gathered as a secondhand source. The conclusion and later observed trends were the direct result of a meta-analysis of combined numbers, resources, and whatever was available for each analyzed variable. It was found that nations with higher GDP, GNI, and education levels typically donated less money to the UN in contrast to the rest of the lower income peers. The most significant aspect of this effort was discovering that countries of lower incomes typically donated more from their governments in comparison to those with higher incomes. Even if both of these economies were placed side by side, observed over the same amount of time, and became more profitable as they went on, countries of lower incomes still donated more to the organization. These findings did not support my initial hypothesis. For this project, p-tests and r-tests were used in order to test for correlation between eddy variables and stick out any random coincidences or solidify any significance observed on the graph. I chose this project because tens of thousands of people rely on this organization for basic needs, and in some cases, various governments must give up central control of their own country to those left in charge by the UN in hopes that their circumstances would improve. All in all, I felt that all of this trust must also come with many risks, and I wanted to see if the system by which the UN conducts and gains money for overseas humanitarian aid is fair in the way that we see it subjectively. I felt that this project was important because I personally find the amount and severity of scandals by the UN disturbing, especially because of how much influence the organization has across the board. So I felt that this project was important because I wanted to find connections between international relations and social and behavioral sociology. I thought that assessing education and its connection to a nation's economy was a great start because education and money have been proven to drive and influence the rest of our lives. I'm hoping that later researchers with more experience will dive into the psychological impact of a population under UN rule, the benefits and drawbacks of a substitute government, and continue to assess how humanitarian aid is impacted. There are so many ideas. Both of the graphs on the slide contain 8 random country samples for average years of education and the amount of funding provided to the UN. In the first graph, Japan and Korea had the highest averages, sharing similar education years in 2018, while Brazil and Myanmar had some of the lowest. This graph has a p-value of 0.32. This means that there is no statistical significance between each of their average years of education. The second graph concerns UN funding between these 8 random samples. In this figure, Japan is among the lowest contributors despite its high education, and Denmark carries the highest amount of contributions, despite having slightly lower averages in education in 2018. This graph has a p-value of 0.35. This shows that there is no statistical significance between each country and the amount of money they donated that year. As you can see in the top 3 figures, Japan donated the most amount of money to the UN in 2006, even though 2006 was one of their years of lowest performance for GDP. This is when I compare high income and low income countries. Japan was my high income, Myanmar was my low, and now I'm comparing both of them. So as you can see in the top 3 figures, Japan donated the most amount of money to the UN in 2006, even though 2006 was one of their years of lowest performance for GDP. The most significant detail in this graph is spotted in 2012, where Japan experienced one of the greatest profits for their GDP. When compared to 2006, Japan contributed less money to the organization, a series in what is now an ongoing downward trend. Even with the nation's GNI gradually increasing, there was no correlation between the year and how well Japan's economy did. Now for the numbers. In order from left to right, the linear graphs show p-values of 0.01, 0.22, and 0.49. In graph 1, a p-value of 0.01 signifies that there is a very strong relationship between Japan's donations decreasing with increasing years. In graphs 2 and 3, with p-values of 0.22 and 0.49, the data suggests that there was no significant relationship between the year and how well Japan's economy fared. Now for Myanmar. As you can see in the lower 3 figures, Myanmar was able to consistently donate $10,000 for every year beginning in 2009 all the way through 2021. This is especially impressive because 2009 was the year Myanmar had a GDP per capita of only $600. The most significant observation within all 3 of these graphs are the positive trends and the steep projection of growth for Myanmar across the board. Only in recent years, Myanmar has experienced a stagnation in donations, but this could be because of the current Burmese government being under authoritarian control, as the previous government was taken over by a military coup d'etat in 2021. Now for Myanmar's numbers. In order from left to right, the linear graphs show p-values of 0.54 greater than 0.01 and 0.02. In graph 1, a p-value of 0.54 signifies that there is no indication of a relationship between Myanmar's donations increasing with increasing years. In graph 2, a p-value of greater than 0.01 indicates that there is a very strong relationship between Myanmar's GDP increasing with increasing years. Graph 3's p-value of 0.02 also indicates that there is a very strong relationship between Myanmar's GNI increasing with increasing years. To summarize those figures and others that were evaluated and looked at, higher income countries donated less of time, while lower income countries donated more. Some factors that could have influenced my results were that most of my country's data came from UN websites instead of that of the individual governments that I looked at. There is a possibility that the UN probably skewed the results to make their impact seem more significant, or their numbers were tweaked in hopes of not offending any nations, or they could have just done this not to deter any potential states from joining. Another factor could have been events that took place in each country, such as Myanmar's coup d'etat. For big events such as this one, mass protests and instability would understandably direct attention away from donating. The populations of each nation could have been a huge determining factor in how much money a nation made per capita, as some would most likely have a higher working population, therefore allowing a country to seem more well off, when in reality they just had more people at work. Also, because of the time I may have missed out on some new information about each of the samples countries. Anything I may have missed. What are the significance of these results? Basically, the distribution of the UN member states' funds is not fair. Surprise! Even with this, I hope that there is room for improvement and stricter standards so that everyone who can feel the same weight. As for future plans, I have so many ideas. At what point do people gain that doomsday mentality? What kind of steps are available for leaders and representatives to promote foreign policies while respecting their initiatives of other countries at the same time? Can grown men actually communicate with one another? Questions. For a quick rundown of my step-by-step process, education data for a select number of member states can be obtained through the World Bank's Data Hub. That's what I used. Background knowledge on what was going on in any of the countries during the years where their GDP, GNI, and education levels grew and or shrank were obtained through UN reports and multiple news sources during any of the years I wanted an explanation for. Education over the course of 18 years for 132 member states, GNI, and GDP were evaluated in Google Sheets and Data Classroom. P-tests and the R-squared of graphs were conducted in these programs as well. The only physical material I made use of during this project was a laptop because that's all I needed. To bring this presentation to a close, I would like to thank my family for letting me read out many surprising research articles to them and helping me find keywords for research in order to find my data. My teacher, who encouraged me to ramble on about potential project ideas until I was able to settle on one. My mentor for her patience and amazing expertise with conducting research and saving my life with formatting my education graph for me when Data Classroom did not want to do its job. And Courtney for this really cool opportunity to dive into something I was interested in. Questions?
Awesome job, Waynesy. Let me just get Taran on here. All right. That was awesome. I know I've learned a ton. Questions from the audience, please toss those in the comments. Taran, if you want to go ahead and start, you can go first.
Awesome. That was a really great presentation. Yeah, good job. So I just have one kind of broad question. Mm-hmm. So in the ideal scenario that we all wish for, where you had unlimited time, data, and other resources, how would you want to expand your project?
Probably by conducting or gathering my own data within each country instead of just looking at it from one organization. If I could travel to every country and then do it on my own or with my own little team, that would be amazing because I know where these numbers came from, why they look like that, and what kind of environment influenced these factors. That would be so cool.
Sounds like you're going to need to complete a Fulbright application here in a few years. Awesome. I also have a question for you, Waynesy, and my question for you is how I'm gonna try and say it out loud and then I'll type it so it pops up in the comments. How do you think your results could influence future policy?
Oh, I'm really hoping that higher income countries will make more of an effort to donate more to the United Nations if they're able to, based off of the circumstances, because I see that this organization has good intentions with how they plan on solving conflict or preventing conflict, but I also see many things that could be different with how they do it. Higher income nations have a greater influence than the lower income ones. Like how many of you have heard of Myanmar before? I don't think so. But many of us know about like Japan and Korea and China and the United States. So Whenever these nations have something big to say, we always listen, but the lower income ones were like, who even is that?
No, you're right. There's a lot to learn, and I'm super excited to see where you continue to go. It was such a fun time to have you in class, and really glad you got to be a part of this program along with everyone else. Definitely well on your way to social scientist. So keep working hard. I can't wait to see what you do next. And with that, we have our final presenter who will be coming up here in a moment. Just a few last round of announcements we have is another thank you to the Florida Department of Education for funding this, so we can have like captivating presentations that we've seen today with Ava, Wyatt, and Waynesy, and that we get to see Jay Briones here in just one moment. If you like what you see and you know a student who's in high school that would like to participate in our winter research experience, definitely check that out. We're still accepting applications, but spots do fill up. So go ahead and check that out. It starts January 15th. I would love to have any extra students in participating in that program this winter. And then lastly, we have All That I Want for Christmas, which is to have 5 college-bound first-generation low-income students from Upward Bound participate in our winter research experience. As a first-generation student myself, I would love to include these students in our research. So please, if you're feeling generous, please donate today so we can sponsor those students into a program. So next up, we have Jay Brion, but it looks like he's had a few. There's been some glitches on his side getting his presentation up. So him and I are going to work together. Just give us 1 second to get his presentation added to the stage. So Jay Brion, if you wouldn't mind hitting, if you look on the bottom, you have mute, stop cam, and present. If you click present, then you should be able to go to slides and then pull slides from your computer. Are you able to pull those slides?
I'm trying to, but it won't let me.
It won't let you. All right, we're going to try one other way, and hopefully we can get you to go today. You can also click share screen. And then, so go to the same place, go to present, and then share screen again, and you can click whichever tab it's open in. So you might be able to select the tab that is open in on your computer. Can you try and see if that one will work?
Okay. Can you see anything?
It doesn't seem to be coming through, so we might have, let's see, if you can, did you get to select the screen that you wanted to, like a Chrome tab or the entire screen even?
No.
Okay, so if you click present, share screen, hit the blue share screen button, do you get like a little pop-up window?
Yeah, it says choose what to share with StreamYard, but it's
Is there
not.
nothing to select?
It is. No, there's not.
Okay. All right, Jay Brion, we might have to see if we can hang out afterwards and have you present tomorrow. I'm so sorry about that. That seems to be just like something going on with maybe something out of our control. So thank you for being here, and thank you for everyone and hanging in there. Jay Brion, we'll make sure that you can go with us tomorrow first thing. So my apologies on that again. And I'll just say one big thank you to everyone here who's been able to watch and participate. Once again, a huge thank you to the Florida Department of Education for funding 100% of the student-driven research. And we gave you a little teaser. Please come and see Jay Brion's presentation. Tomorrow is at the same time at the December 13th link. So we'd be so excited to have you there. And thank you all so much for participating, attending, and being so attentive through your watching today and asking questions. This has been such a fun crowd to have. So thank you all again, and we look forward to having you at tomorrow's presentation night.